Much, John. Back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Ian. That's a great update and lots of exciting things happening for the group, which is fabulous. We know you've been, as always, putting in a lot of effort to make all that happen. So we're going to move. We're going to move now to Vinay, the main feature for this evening, and just bear with me a second. I think Vinay is known to most of us, but just by way of introduction, Vinay is passionate about enhancing the quality of our relationships, mental health and well-being. He works as a mental health trainer, counselor, and adult educator with his company, the Stride Network. His primary mission is to improve the mental well-being of international students and migrants using his experiences as a sandbox. He describes himself as an optimist and a dreamer, and very much a work in progress. So welcome back, Vinay. I think this is your third. I think this is your third talk to us. Is that right? Third or fourth? I can't remember now.
Yes, third.
Third, yeah.
Thankfully,
fantastic.
Thankfully, it's I mean, every time I listen to you introducing, I'm laughing. Which idiot wrote that?
That was you.
I mean, that was me. Yeah, that was me. So it was obviously it was all me, and yeah, that's me on my nice days. So yeah. That's me talking myself up, which is fantastic. So thank you.
No worries. Okay, now you're going to be joined as well during the course of this talk and presentation by Graham. Graham Barker is working with you together on that, and so you've sort of divvied up the work. So you'll hand over to each other at the appropriate times. And as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be one or two occasions where we'll see if we can split the group up to have a smaller group conversations in what we call breakout rooms. So you'll see a little window pop up when we go to that. And there'll be a question that we want you to talk about and a theme we want you to discuss. So we'll look out for that a little bit later. So without further ado, over to you, Vinay.
Okay, thank you. And welcome everyone. Welcome, gentlemen. I haven't met a lot of you guys. That's because I don't live in Sydney, but I've been really grateful for for the partnership. I'm really glad that I can call on Ian when I need to talk an idea, and Ian's been very supportive of giving me this opportunity to reach out to the extended audience. I'm really grateful that John and Graham are both here as well. And look, as John said, I'm using my experience as a bit of a sandbox, so I don't expect to get everything right, and that's that's the whole point of this thing. It is not about me being the expert. It's about all of us being the expert in each other's lives, and us talking about our experience. So I want this to be really a two-way conversation. So if anyone wants to make a point, whenever you want to make a point, please feel free to raise your hand or type a message in the chat, and John or Ian or Graham someone will stop me in my footsteps, and so that I can take a breath, and we can answer whatever question it might be. So feel free to pause at any time. I've got there's enough time for the presentation to go through, but I don't want to be the only one talking. All right.
Right.
Okay. So great. So what do we want to so in terms of what I want to touch on in the next hour or so is a couple of things. I want to talk about the difference between loneliness, solitude, and isolation. Okay, we go through each one of those at different times, and I want to kind of unpack that a little bit. I want to talk about the stigma. There's a whole when you type loneliness into Google, all you see is getting images of people sitting in dark rooms in a corner, right? So there's a bit of a stigma attached to it. So I want to touch on that a little bit. I want to talk to you about the value of good relationships. Not that you already don't know. You're already doing that in your mentoring relationships. And do we have anyone else on the call who is not a mentor or who is a mentee? Anyone who's identified as someone who is external to Mentoring Men? Ian, do you know? You're on mute, Ian. While Ian is looking that up, and also wanted help you walk away with some tips and strategies on how you can start to have meaningful social contact with each other through this social distancing period. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Sorry, Vinay. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't
good.
find myself on the on the screen. Yeah, there's a mixture here. There's mentors and there's trained mentors, active mentors, and there's guys who are being mentored on the call.
Okay, fantastic. So hopefully this information will make sense to all of you. Like I said, there'll be there's a feedback form that'll be sent out after the session. Please feel free to be as honest as possible. It'll just help me make some of these sessions more useful for you in the future. All right. So let's get into it. Now, this is the this is the first thing that I want you to take away from this is that the word loneliness means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and we'll unpack this as we go. But it is a very personal experience, and and for the person experiencing some sense of loneliness, or a sense of sadness around how lonely they feel very much alone. And I would think that some of us at some point in time have experienced what it feels like to be that bird which is sitting separate in the room when everyone else is having a healthy conversation. So what do we actually mean by loneliness? Anyone have any ideas on what do we mean by loneliness? If you feel like if you don't want to talk, you can type, or I encourage you to unmute your mic and say something out loud.
Being socially isolated.
Yeah, being socially isolated. Thanks, Phil.
Particularly relevant in terms of the virus.
Yeah. I mean, all of us are feeling it. I mean, I've been home for what, 18 days now, and as much as I love my wife, I just want to see some other people. So yeah, I mean, I'm not bordering on loneliness yet, but yeah, I'm definitely feeling a lot isolated.
I think sometimes we can have a lot of people around us, but still feel lonely, and other times we can maybe be on our own and not feel lonely. Yeah.
Most definitely, I can, the funny thing is it's a great point, Ian, because funny thing is I can, for me to feel more connected, I can go out for a run and I can go to the top of the hill and stand there, be myself, and feel like I'm connected to the rest of the world. And I can be at home with my wife next to me, with me checking my emails, with someone else talking to me on Skype, and I can still feel completely lonely through that process. Yeah. So we've all experienced that. Any other ideas on?
Sorry, Vinay, just a quick one. Just as a quick shortcut for everybody, if you have put yourself on mute, there's a shortcut to unmute yourself, which is to hold your finger on the space bar while you're speaking. And then as soon as you release the space bar, you go back onto mute. So that can be a nice, easy shortcut to contribute. Back to you, Vinay.
Great point. Thanks, John. Thank you. See, this is why we need John and Ian and the Grants in the world, right? To help me out. Fantastic. I love it. All right.
I think loneliness can be a feeling, like it's a painful thing, really. So if you're feeling alone, and you don't really want to be alone, but you don't have anybody to reach out to, I think you could feel it's like a sense of grief, or it's a feeling of being down. It can be. I'm not talking about just being by yourself and wanting to be. It's this loneliness that you're talking about is almost a psychological issue. It's bad.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's people who have experienced chronic loneliness, and it moves on to anxiety and depression. What do you think, Graham, in terms of it being a psychological issue?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying out the spacebar technique. Yeah, look, I think that definitely. I like the point that Ian made. There's relative loneliness and absolute loneliness. So that feeling that we can get when we're amongst a group of people who are all gelling quite well, and most people would think that we're part of the scene, but in fact, you get that being on the outside looking in feeling, and being on the outside can actually be quite lonely. It can also be powerful sometimes. if that's what you're looking for. But it can, by and large, really hurt. And I struggle, which is worse, absolute loneliness or relative loneliness. In other words, we're feeling lonely because everybody else around us, our perception is they're really well connected, versus just times where we're either physically isolated or mentally not able to present ourselves to other people, or they're not, or we've had rejection. So it's safer to be alone, but then that results in acute feelings of being lonely. And it's definitely, I think our architecture has a lot to do with it, the way we organize our living space. Particularly now, I think you look at the Hugh Mackay research says that the single largest growing household is the household of one. So you don't have to look very far to say we're almost building loneliness into our environment, into our financial system with the rents, the cost of rent, and things like that.
Great point.
Vinay?
Yeah.
I'd also like to say that it's, in my own personal circumstances, like a loss of a significant relationship, through separation causes loneliness.
And we are definitely going to touch on that, Phil. Thank you for that. It's it's a crucial point, especially in those moments of transition. We can feel. For me, loneliness, I often feel like a void. I can't put a word to it. I definitely know it's a feeling. It hurts. It can come up any point in time, and I often can, without even knowing, it can kind of engulf me. So when I looked around for definitions on what loneliness is, it's a loss of companionship, at the very least. Feeling left out, the rejection aspect of it. Disappointed with the quality of friendship. I can sometimes look around, and sometimes within my family itself, I look at some of the people in my family and go, I'm disappointed that I don't have stronger relationship with this certain member, even though we share so many values. The lack of social networks, for the whole advent of social media. We'll talk about that. Wanting more from social relationship. Signing on to the next network, next phase, next marketing social media platform that comes out. At the moment, TikTok is getting a lot of popularity because of what the void that it can fill. Not feeling understood by people. That's that's another indication that someone might be feeling lonely. Like I sometimes I find myself getting frustrated with with people who I'm closely linked up with, because they don't feel like they understand. And the fact is that the thought of it, just the whole concept of loneliness, can be quite intimidating for some people. So if anyone, as we are going through this conversation, if you're feeling some overwhelming feeling coming up as we're talking about certain things, feel free to just reach out and send us a message so we can give you some support around it. Okay, please don't feel like you have to just keep quiet and let me talk through this whole thing. Is that okay, Ian? Just give me 1 second. John has just highlighted that there's some background noise coming through. I'm just going to try and turn that down. Just give me a moment.
Yeah. John, the space bar didn't work for me that time. Is that?
Just while Vinay's addressing that noise issue, I was just going to talk about how one of the common factors that we have is with mentoring men. One of the common issues that we're really trying to address, or that the program addresses without even intending to, is overcoming loneliness, and just that desire for deeper connectivity. So it's I'm not sure to what extent we measure that, Ian, but certainly in the questionnaires and the work, and I think the intent is to try and make that unification that we normally would have had we lived in the same type of tribal group.
Yeah, we do measure that through the surveys, and clearly there's a number of connection opportunities through the breakfasts and the walk and talk and at the forums when we were able to get together, which I really enjoy. I mean, there's ample connection opportunities through the program, and we're looking to do some more stuff around that space as well. So yeah.
Excellent. So now I want to just, the next couple of slides, I want to just unpack the difference between, what we experience is solitude, what we're experiencing now in this current state of affairs as being, social distancing, social isolation, and also, previously before the virus hit, there would have been a lot of people who are experiencing this kind of isolation who will now be laughing and going, pointing the finger, going, "Ha ha! Now you know what I'm talking about."
Yeah.
Versus loneliness. Right, so let's unpack that a little bit. Now, there's 3 definitions here. People want to take a guess, other than Ian, John, and Graham, as to which one might be what. Just take a minute to read through.
Are we seeing the slides here?
Yeah. People seeing slides here?
I think number 1 is loneliness.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Someone else? It's not that difficult, I don't think.
Isolation is the second one.
Okay.
Is it? No, or
I always thought solitude was the second
solitude.
one.
Yeah. Sorry, solitude is the second one.
Social isolation for the
third. So it's really the choice you're making with solitude.
I paid John to throw us off the. Thank you. It's loneliness, solitude, and isolation. Yeah? So the difference is that it is possible to be isolated without feeling lonely, right? And the other way around, like Ian talked about. We can feel lonely even when you're not isolated, which is what a lot of us metro folk feel. I think when we go into the regional areas, rural areas, this is as you start to expand mentoring men into the smaller towns, Ian, you might start to see people experiencing social isolation, that being a significant part and parcel of of their life. It's quite common, social isolation and loneliness to go hand in hand in regional areas where people might not have access to transport, to travel, or their socioeconomic condition might be impacted by the situation they're in, which could be the same case for a lot of people now, because a lot of people out there have lost their jobs. So people could be experiencing a mix of social isolation as well as loneliness as a result of both. The big difference is how we look at how we are when we are alone, right? Now, solitude is something that I'm still trying to get comfortable with. I am, I have to be honest, even after being in this field for such a long time, I'm still not completely comfortable with solitude. I think it's because of how I was, what kind of values are ingrained into me, and the deep-rooted beliefs it shows that often the way we believe, what we think about the world, our mindset has a big impact on whether we see it as solitude or loneliness, right? With isolation, at least, we in a lot of the cases, it is observable to the external person. So you as a mentor or you as a friend or a companion can actually call out isolation if you see it. But with loneliness, you might very well see a person who is the best, who is a people pleaser, out and about, having conversations, but yet they don't have the sense that they're connected to the rest of the world, right? And there are lots of limiting beliefs that can come into play, and we're going to touch on some of them around being alone. And I want you to think about how this might play a part in your lives or the lives of the men that about and about.
You know, can I make a point? I saw a
Please do.
study, and I'm not sure if it was loneliness or isolation, but people, as one of them, people lived a lot less, a shorter period, and if they got a pet or just something that took away that, it was incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
So this is, I think Don said it before, this is not a good state to be in, and it's something that we should be trying to address, because it extends life, it makes life more pleasurable as well. Yeah.
I think Ian is absolutely right. A lot of the research shows lack of socialisation causes all sorts of health issues, including dementia. So being alone is definitely not a good thing. I'm not sure that it's always, I'm interested in your comment, Vinay, loneliness is imposed on you or by society. That could be true, I think, for immigrants, refugees, you know, but there are some people who are just so shy and introverted. It's so difficult for them to reach out, but they desperately need friendships, and they will thrive more if somehow that loneliness could be broken down. But in some ways, they're not able to do it themselves for whatever reason.
Yep. Yeah. Good point. Thank you, Donald. I totally understand, and you know, I can see where you're coming from that as well. You know, it's the studies right now. The current studies are showing that, you know, the impact of loneliness is having the same effect as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Okay, so you know, it's pretty huge. And you know, in terms of reducing, you know, increasing the mortality rate, it's reducing the, what do you call, the age that people live to by close to 10 years. So due to the sense of loneliness, I mean, mental health, you know, people experiencing chronic mental health also similar, you know, on a similar trajectory alongside that. So it's a, you know, it's a society-wide issue, and you know, it's going to, you know, come up a lot more and more, given the circumstances that they're living in, and also a number of other reasons, right? For example, I've just shown an infographic here of the number of different circumstances which can sometimes lead to loneliness, right? Being a victim of crime, experiencing discrimination, losing a job, entering a period of poor health, being homeless, you know, becoming a carer, living with a disability, being a refugee seeker, you know, going to retirement, moving jobs, you know, moving house. You know, for a period of time when I moved from, you know, Brisbane down to here, there was a sense of, you know, I was lacking that connection, right? And that was pretty much the time that, you know, you and I met, Ian. So, you know, that was good exercise for me. So there are any thoughts on this, you know, infographic? There's a lot of areas here that, you know, and a lot of these areas will also be relevant to where mentoring comes into it. Right? The mentoring relationship, it can be meaningful at a lot of these different transition periods, and this is an area that I'm interested in a lot more, because we go through a lot of these transitions on a day by day basis, or you know, on a yearly basis. And you know, when transitions happen, we have to actually either, you know, look at life a different way, either upskill ourselves, change our mindset, or you know, or you know, start to have new input so that we can start to reignite the process that we were on before, you know, before all of this took place. It will be quite relevant for someone. Now,
I was just going to make a small comment.
Sure.
You know,
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm good. I didn't have video before. I suddenly came alive. So, fantastic diagram. An interesting thing I've thought about, particularly with what's going on with society at the moment, in relation to loneliness, is there were identified about 5 key areas where people fall into a period of loneliness, you know, and definitely being a carer or going into care, that they're a real lonely group, and obviously separation from a partner when they've been looking after things. But a simple one where men really lose connection is they get an injury or they retire from sport, and so they're no longer seeing those regular people, and even though the relationships might vary in their depth, they at least had connection to people, and then suddenly they've done a knee or pulled a muscle and they suddenly can't play sport. That's sort of one of the key areas where people lost connection. And I wonder about right now where sports cancelled, people can't participate in it, but you can't even go around to your mate's place and watch the footy, which I know may be quite a shallow connection for someone.
It impacts 100,000 people in Melbourne alone, so I don't think it's shallow, Mark.
I did. One of my friends who I met up with the other day from Melbourne did actually sort of go, "Oh yeah, the footy's off," and it seemed to be a very close to his heart thing, doesn't it, Ian?
I was going to make the comment that not having AFL probably impacts about 500,000 people going to the matches, but and rugby league there's probably another 200 or 300 people are impacted as well. So.
A couple of dozen anyway. But anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there. I think it's a fantastic diagram.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I didn't create it. It came out. UK is starting to do a lot more work around this. This comes from the UK. So they now have a ministerial department for loneliness in the UK, based on some research they've done, because they're starting to identify the health impacts of loneliness in their society, and they set up a commission. The lady was called Jo Cox, and this is where that comes out of. So I think it was a great thing, and it kind of ties in with the conveyor belt, Ian, that that you're kind of wanting to do for mentoring men.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
And going back to Donald's previous comment as well, I guess the diagram tends to illustrate that loneliness, by and large, comes from an event. When his point about the makeup of certain individuals makes it very difficult for them to have the necessary social skills where they can integrate into the community. And if I can share my experience working for another voluntary organisation where I was supporting a gentleman who had cancer, and he had nobody in his life. And as I got to know him, I realised the reason he had nobody in his life, he wasn't a very nice man. And that's a tough call. But he was someone who was constantly complaining, and I can understand why people just wouldn't want to be around this individual. And so it was quite sad that, with his age, he had nobody in his life. So it seems to be that for some people, maybe it's in their DNA, or maybe things that have occurred to them in the past that makes it far more challenging for them to make friends and to socially integrate.
Yeah.
John, you raise a really good point there. And there's a real opportunity in a mentoring relationship to provide feedback around it. Because sometimes when I've come across that situation and I use certain approach to be able to explain to people some behaviors that they do, or some things that they do to alienate people that they have no intention initially of alienate. It's become a little habit. It's become a characteristic that they do. And you're right. Sometimes we can carry these things around. Sometimes they're a defense mechanism. But if we're meeting people at their real point of loneliness, that's also an opportunity for them to change. And more recently in the mentor training, we've had a look at the Joharian window, which is an excellent tool of giving feedback. It's just a simple 2x2 grid, and I won't go into it now because it's going to detract from loneliness. It's really a feedback tool, or it can be used as that. And it's a real gentle one, but quite deft at the same time, quite clever in the way it goes about. It's quite an old thing. It's been around since the 50s. Two guys, Joe and Harry, developed it, hence the word Joharian window. But I'll distribute it through Ian for those mentors who have been to the more recent trainings. It'll be a bit of a repeat, but for others, it hasn't. And it's great for everyone, for mentees to know about it. It's a great little tool and pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you. Thank you, John, for your comment, because that is what I was going to talk about in the next slide, because it's not just about the transition, it's also about how we relate. Now, let's look at that in a bit more detail, right? So as per the current statistics as the world sits right now, obviously all of us are at risk of experiencing loneliness. So let's assume that 1 year down the track, the virus is under control. We go back to work. We look at the general population, right? People who might be living alone, right? Might be me if this social isolation goes on for too long. Being stuck at home. So I might find myself impacting on relationships. Being unmarried, also there's not enough evidence to prove that someone being in a married relationship can't feel lonely. So but being unmarried obviously increases the risks, a sense of loneliness. Having a small social network, which is quite common for someone moving town, someone moving to a new country with a different language, so on and so forth. People from refugee and cold background, caregivers are at a lot of risk because they're always putting other people's needs in front of them. The work culture, this is something that I'm starting to think about a bit more. I'm finding that in the past 2 weeks for myself, there's been no work chatter, but everyone seems to be very busy. But before 2 weeks ago, when everyone was working in the office, they always had time to chat, but they were and they still had time to do their work. So I'm starting to think, are people overextending themselves when they're working from home, and in the process they could be feeling a bit more exhausted, and they could feel a lot more lonely as a result, right? I definitely know my wife was working at least 30-45 minutes more than what she would, right? There's no travel time, there's no lunch breaks. She's just working and doing all of that at the same time. Sorry, I keep bringing my wife into it, but she's all I've seen in the past weeks. So it's a reflection of where I'm at. Not feeling the camaraderie at work, feeling alienated, or feeling bullied or harassed by work colleagues. All of those real practical things that happen in workplaces, all the subtle incivil behavior that goes on can start people to feel alienated and start to isolate themselves. A perceived lack of social support, right? What do I mean by a perceived lack of social support? What they see as them having support. We always come across someone who is telling us how much Centrelink or how much some other organization, or how much a particular individual in their family is not supporting them. That perceived lack of social support can impact on loneliness as well. And also relationships are well connected but emotionally distant, and you can only start to realize that if the person is trusting you enough to share what it is that's going through. For those of us who know the difference between being well connected and emotionally distant, we can start to relate to it. But for people on the outside, it might be a lot more difficult. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah.
Ian, you had something to say?
I was.
Yep.
Someone else is going to say something then as well, and will I go first?
Yep.
So the bottom point there, I think, is key around mentoring. There may be something that I'm absolutely battling with, that it's a real struggle for me, and in the relationships I've got, I'm not going to raise it with them because judgment or concern about vulnerability or whatever. In a sense, it could build loneliness because there's this thing that's eating me away, but I'm not comfortable telling anyone I know about it. But in a mentoring relationship, a good mentoring relationship, that could change. Is that what you? So well-connected relationships, to me, mentoring should be a well-connected relationship, encourages the honesty, and then that, I guess, it shouldn't be a lonely relationship in the mentoring one. Is that do you see what I'm trying to say there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on what Ian has said, mentors or others?
Vinay, hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go on, Phil.
Yeah. I think there's one missing there as well, which is lack of family nearby, like your brothers and sisters, if they're far away, like overseas or even interstate, which is,
And that can be, and not having ways to connect with them. Okay, not having the means to connect with them.
Yeah, it becomes more difficult. And another one actually that I've that I've had some kind of experience with is for executives and people who are holding quite a high position in their work, let's say, wherever that might be. And people do become more lonely at the top because there is this pressure that they are under to perform all the time and lead the company and have the right answers. And sometimes this can be a real issue for quite senior people who don't have anyone to talk to. They can't share their issues, and it can be quite debilitating for them.
Yeah, yeah. I came across that as well. Yeah, I mean that it can be. I think there's a saying that says it can be lonely at the top. So and that's a similar issue with people on social media now. The social media influencers. I'm starting to see reports which start to say that social media influencers are stopping themselves from going outside and interacting and building relationships because they have created this persona around themselves of being an influencer on media. So they have to dress and look a certain way, which means that they're making, they're creating a niche in the market where they stand out by themselves, which means that they're lonely by themselves. So often, that connectivity is coming out of it. Great topic there. So it's, the reason I'm bringing this up is not so that we can start to point fingers at some of these people who are in these roles or who fit these demographics, but so that, when we are building relationships with these people, be it friends, be it mentors, be it colleagues, be it family members, we need to be aware of what might be going on underneath the surface, under the iceberg, right? That is not visible to the naked eye.
I was going to make a comment that, if I can, it's about where loneliness leads to mental health issues. Loneliness, in a way, could be a mental health issue. It just depends, but it could be the start of something really serious, where people are being more and more, feeling more and more separated from the world and people around them. And I was just thinking the other day with this isolation that we're experiencing, I was just wondering, it's impacting me. I'm sure it's impacting others in some way. It's such an unusual scenario. And I was thinking, what if I wanted to reach out, so this perceived lack of social support, let's say Lifeline or someone like that. And I thought, I don't think I could do that. That is such a difficult thing, perhaps, for people to do, especially if they're really feeling lonely and have other issues, lack of confidence. How hard would it be to reach out for support? And I was thinking, I don't think I could even ring Lifeline. Thought I might do it just for practice, but I just wondered how hard that would be for many people.
Yeah, Don, can I just come in here? It's a really good point, and we actually tried to ring Lifeline, and Men's Line is like an equivalent to Lifeline for men, and suggesting that there's obviously been a huge increase in the number of people ringing through there. And in many cases, it's just for the things we're talking about now. Their life isn't necessarily in crisis. It's just this loneliness, this isolation. And the idea was that we would gladly have them refer men into the program. So I guess if there's just some way we could get the right, we still need to go through an intake process, which Lifeline would do. But I think it's a great point, and I think we can help out those organisations. So rather than that, have a relationship where you're talking to Don every week about, and Don knows the situation and it builds, rather than ringing an anonymous person who's different every time you ring up there. So anyway, we'll watch this space. We're hoping they'll come back to us, but I really feel we can help.
Just following on from your point, Ian, I think it'd be interesting to speak to Pete Landers, because my understanding is that Lifeline works on a case, each call is a case basis, whereas we have a relationship with our mentees. So somebody calling Lifeline, they may feel that there's a certain stigma associated because it's working at that almost critical level, where we don't really work at that level. We're working at a level below that, where we're offering support in a different way and an ongoing relationship. Whereas what Peter impressed upon me is once the call's over, there's the relationship done.
Yeah, it comes back to you've heard the conveyor belt spoken a few times, and just to explain what that is, and you'll see the video hopefully next week. We were asked to try and paint how Mentoring Men works, and the idea was that we're meant to lead this connected life, this non-lonely life, but then life hits us, and it's the stuff that Vinay put on the diagram before, and then we can fall onto a conveyor belt. And if nothing happens, we'll move along that conveyor belt, and our situation could worsen, and ultimately we'll fall off the end. And Mentoring Men is very much preventative, early engagement. It's as they're falling or at the start of the conveyor belt. That's where we want to be in a meaningful relationship. And I suggest that most of the government resources in this area are at the other end of the conveyor belt, the Lifeline, the Beyond Blue, or whatever. That's where their focus is. So I strongly believe that our philosophy is a much smarter way to go. You still need those support groups at the end of the conveyor belt, absolutely. But it'd be great to reduce the number of men who go down through that and also incur the misery of that journey on the conveyor belt as well.
Yeah, good point, Ian. And we've had a comment from Mark Henderson. Mark says maybe we could put a poster up in the Lifeline office notice board where the call operators are at their workstations, so that they know that Mentoring Men is there as a resource. I know you've had conversations with, thank you for that, Mark. You've had conversations with Lifeline and do so on a regular basis. Is that something that you've broached with them?
Yeah, it's hard. The way Lifeline works, it gives the appearance of being a national organisation. And while there is a head office, it's broken down into regions, and each of those regions are largely autonomous, and there's a lack of cooperation and support across them. And the calls are directed around. So we have a very close relationship with Lifeline Harbour Hawkesbury, where we've done a lot of our training. But the calls coming through to there could be from anywhere around Australia. And likewise, calls coming from this geographic area could be anywhere else. And I spoke to one of the senior managers of a regional area, and he didn't give me much optimism. We'll keep trying, but it's just, and maybe that I had a meeting yesterday, someone saying you need to go at the top. You need to go to the head of Lifeline and maybe bring our ambassador, Julian Lisa, into it. But yeah, I personally think it's a fantastic idea, but we need to get them on board. And yeah. So
is that John Brogden? I think he was. Anyway, we digress. Sorry, Vinny and Graham.
That's all right. That's all right. You've got, Ian is getting more work to do. This is what I like at 8 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. Give Ian more things to add to his to-do list. I'm not seeing you writing down, Ian. You better be writing down.
At the moment, I have Saturday afternoon between 4 and 4:30 off, so you've just filled that now. So, okay.
Excellent. I'm glad I could give you some more work to do. Right.
Yep.
This is how we keep Ian from feeling isolated and lonely, by making sure that we're ringing him with all our problems.
That's right.
And then he goes and starts an organization to solve them. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So let's keep going. We talked about the demographics. We talked about the transitions that that might start to induce a sense of loneliness or a sense of isolation among people. The biggest risk from a health perspective is that loneliness has shown that it increases the risk of heart attack and stroke in men, especially. Obesity is linked to mental illness as well. Loneliness, as we talked about earlier, Dawn, is definitely linked to depression, anxiety. This is what happens, and this is the problem with loneliness, is that people, when they start to experience a sense of loneliness, they can't really reach out and put a finger on it. And when they go to their GP, who is most often the first point of call for a lot of Australians, the GP asks them to fill out a depression and anxiety scale. And if they don't tick all of those boxes on that scale, then guess what? They don't get access to the support that they need, but yet they're on the trajectory to working towards depression and anxiety. So Mentoring Men, again, has a great role to play in helping people identify how loneliness can be linked to depression and anxiety, and pulling people back from that brink of maybe losing the job, losing their family, losing the relationships, and also having the stigma of the whole mental health issues. Obviously, from a suicidal thought perspective, it's high risky behavior. So when we finish up today, I want you to think about some of these ideas, and and understand that someone just being lonely is not just about you giving them some space and some time to get them together. It could be a much more they could be much more vulnerable than we think that they might be. Right. And like I think Donald, as you said, that it's linked to dementia, definitely linked to Alzheimer's as well, and ongoing dementia. So there's significant number of health issues linked to loneliness, which is not even diagnosed as a mental health issue. Who knows, in the next DSM it might become one, but that again is useful for early insurers and so on and so forth. So it's time for the rest of us to get talking now, right? John, it's time for you to take charge. Now, there's a statement that I've put up here. For some people, there's an anxiety in being alone, and for others, there's anxiety in being part of a crowd. Okay, I want all of you on the call, the 20 so people, to think about which scenario do you identify with more. Which, where do you think you might slot in if you put yourself in the situation of this statement?
Is this for the small groups, Vinay?
We are going into small groups. The thing we realize with the small groups, Graham, is that we don't get to see the slides when we go into the groups.
Okay, so you're going to do that now. And
yeah, so we'll have a general conversation now, and then we'll go into the groups in a second. Is that okay, John?
Yep, that's fine. Yep.
Yeah. So does someone want to kick off? I mean, does the statement make sense? I just thought it was an interesting statement to put out there and to see what people think. For me, is definitely the secondary, which is the issue for me. So anxiety that I feel in being part of a crowd in certain kind of crowded situations.
Yeah.
Personally, but I want to know about what other people think.
Anxiety and being alone.
Anxiety and being
alone. I like actually being in crowds.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you, Vinay. For most of my life, I hate being in a room with people and being in the centre. I'd always make a beeline for somewhere in the corner of the wall. Gradually getting over that, but I didn't want people looking at me.
How do you go for the men's breakfast then when we're all in the house?
I looked at, and so we get 60 people at the men's breakfast, and I do it despite how I feel, and it's just not me. I'm not that. What's the personality type? I mean,
introvert.
Yeah, I'm not the extrovert, and yeah, but I don't know. I'm changing, I guess. This journey that I've been on, often you take a step, and then it's a lot easier the next time, and then you're taking that. I was interviewed on community radio, which 3 people listened to, and I was so anxious before that first one of those, and you got no idea. I was petrified. What am I doing? And then it's now a regular thing. And then the same, I had the opportunity to go on TV, the same thing. And one of the lessons I've learned, like, you almost face your fear. It's never as bad as what you think it's going to be. And you actually, so this anxiety is now a lot less in a group environment. And I think, so I'm talking too much here, but one of the things for me is that we've learned to not be afraid of letting people see our vulnerability. And once you start, a lot of the anxiety was driven by this. And so I think that's the key thing. You once you get rid of we've all got our challenges and issues, and then it's okay. It's okay not to be. Yeah. Yeah.
So for someone, I think, Phil, you were saying that it's the opposite for you. Is it possible to share a little bit around that? Or would you like to? It may be
Yeah.
easier in the smaller
I
group.
mean, I just, I don't know. I can't probably put it too strongly. I just detest being alone. You know, I feel like a fish out of water, and because of my separation, I've just been sort of like thrown into this, and yeah, I'm more than happy to be part of crowds. I was in the Philippines last year, and there's no more crowded place than Manila, and I didn't have any issues.
And I think, well, Phil, you and I have shared a little bit over the last little while, but I always, when I'm talking to people about what they can do, the way you've gone about, for example, pre-COVID, I guess COVID's really put a spigot in it, but I just think how resourceful, you know, someone like you are, because you have constructed contact with people, and it's been fantastic road. It's not easy, but you do it every day.
Yeah, I'm pretty annoyed with the virus, put it that way, because I've built up a lot of support. Suddenly this virus comes along and trying to tear it all down. You know,
We need
trying to do my best.
We need to figure out a way to have virtual ping pong. Can you have the ball going down, Ian? Can you fix that up?
Oh no, I'm still playing real table tennis.
Oh really? Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Vinay, is there before we assign people to their rooms, these are just short little conversations. You've got some other questions there too.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, I wanted to have a look at the second and third question there, right? So, given that we got an idea from Phil about ping pong, that's great. What whichever camp you find yourself in, what strategies have worked for you? We learned, we heard from Ian about the strategies that he had in place. Something that I wanted to add to that was that I found myself that when I go into a different persona, when I'm in work mode, I'm an extrovert, but when I'm at home mode, I'm an introvert. Very much so. And that's how I used to be. The work has just made me an extrovert. I don't think about it too much. And how does in your current role with Mentoring Men, this particular statement, whichever way that the person that you're working with is going to go, how do you think it might impact on your role in relevant in context of mentoring? This is what I want you to think about. John is going to put us into different rooms for about 3 or 4 minutes, and we're just going to have a smaller conversation. It's just going to be more intimate, and then we'll come back to the presentation. We'll continue.
Great, thanks, Vinay. So I'm going to split you up now, or the system will split you up at random, and you'll be in a small conversation with a small breakout room conversation with about 3 other people. So these are just for 4 minutes. So it's a nice, short, tight little conversation. Those questions that you can see around your strategies to solve these anxieties and your impact on mentoring men, on your role as mentoring men. So this should happen automatically. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. You'll get a countdown timer when you have 60 seconds left, and then you'll come back into the main room. So we'll see you shortly.
to try and do it.
Yeah.
John has joined us.
I'm just eavesdropping.
Okay.
Ah, yes. Don just made a great point, John, about, fake it till you make it. All right.
Yeah. Very
A
good.
lot of us have used it quite successfully, and I think as mentors, I think a lot of resilience might come from that, because initially, mentors will experience some form of resistance from people.
Very good. I'm going to leave you guys. I'm going to go to another room.
All right.
How do we go, John?
What do you think, Alan?
Well, I have no idea.
To what extent I'm engaged with that group. If it's a group of people I don't know, that certainly creates a lot more anxiety than perhaps with a group of people who I'm a bit more familiar with.
Okay. I think our average IQ has just gone down, guys. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you. I'll leave you now. No, I was just eavesdropping just to check that you're all happily having a chat here. So you seem to be well in control. I'll move on to the next.
John, you're doing a brilliant job. Fantastic. Yeah, seriously. No,
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
The scenario I identify with is, as a kid, I was always very happy to be.
That's tough. I have a friend who lost his wife about a year ago, and he's been living on his own. We've been having him for dinner, one night a week. But during the coronavirus, of course, we can't do it. And so I really feel for him being on his own all the time. He doesn't have anybody to share with, only, on Zoom. It's tough.
Yeah, that's so. I'm just dropping in. I'm dropping into each of the groups just to see how the conversation is going. But that's a really good point, George, because technology, as we know, is playing such an important role for all of us in different ways now. So, making use of it and helping to educate somebody who's unfamiliar with it is a role I think we can all play. Yeah. Nick, from your side, have you any thoughts around these?
I think. Sorry.
You go, Phil. It's okay.
Okay. No, I was just going to say, I think Zoom is really good technology. It's better than having no Zoom, but it's a long way from face-to-face contact, because that's where you get the real human element.
Absolutely.
Here he is.
Stephen? Oh, hey, John.
Hi. I think our time is just about up now, everyone. So we're going to. Sorry, I've just come in at the very end, but you've presumably had a bit of a chat and shared some thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, we could have had more time. It was quite good.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Well, let's all come back as a plenary now and just share any particular points. Can we have a spokesman? Mark, could you be our spokesman for this group?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, I'll see you back there.
Have we got a bit more? Let's see what happens.
Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed. Oh, we've got 50 seconds. Sorry, there's a countdown timer there. That's we've got about a minute left before everybody comes back. 45 seconds.
I'm sorry, I clicked the button and I've left my group.
Oh, have you? Okay, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry, yeah, but we didn't get to hear from Stephen, unfortunately. So.
Okay, all right, but I'm sure probably some of the ideas will be the same, but different stories I heard when I was just visiting the groups there from various people and different examples, which is always interesting to hear and understand how different people approach these things. Okay, good. I think just about everybody is back. So welcome back, and we're just going to have a quick share of each room. We're going to start with group number 4, which was Mark. You were just going to say just a quick snapshot, a quick.
Sure. It seems that having to have a bit of intention to communicate with people in a group would go quite a long way, as opposed to just sitting back. And Shiraz helps. I think I captured it, I hope.
Yeah, that's great. That's very succinct and very relevant, I'm sure, for many. Group number 3, sorry, who was in group number 3?
That was me.
George?
I was in group 3. None of us, of course, like loneliness. One of our participants, I can't think of his name, said there is a loneliness of touch. The social media or Zoom is great, but there needs to be physical touch.
That's a really good point.
To offset loneliness.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And that's a well-recognized important attribute that is a very, very important thing. And of course, at the moment, it's a very tough thing to live without. But thank you for that, George, and the other team members there. Group number 2, who did we have? That was Ian. Yep.
Peter Olmer was in group 2.
Peter.
I can't remember what we said.
Sorry.
I think there was a split between whether we preferred to be on our own and be in a group. So we had variations on that. I can't remember what's the second.
Sorry, Peter, I put you on the spot there. I wrote it down.
Had I known, I've got the pen, but I didn't write anything.
It's lonely at the top. There was a number of us had moved from one to the other, and we recognised that it wasn't necessarily an issue. You could be happy in either scenario. I guess it's only where there was acute anxiety with being with either. And the way we got around it, there was a couple of us that would just do it, face your fear and do it. And the other suggestion was just to ask questions. Take an interest in other. If you're feeling isolated, just take an interest in someone else and just start asking questions and listening. Great.
Very nice.
Great stuff.
Very good. Thank you, guys. And lastly, then group 1, which was Vinay. I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to ask somebody else in your group. I think Alan, you were in group 1, weren't you? Were you in?
Yeah,
were you?
I was in group 1. Thank you very much. I will second what Ian said, which is in those situations that you just do it. So you, for me, my anxiety comes from being in those not small groups but large group situations, and I've experienced it on several occasions, and I'm terrified usually. But I just got to go through with it because there's no alternative. I'm in a position where I just have to act.
Very good. And fake it till you make it. I think.
Yes, this is what Don said. Yes, exactly.
That's right.
Go on, Don.
It's that's a good strategy. Very good strategy because I think we often surprise ourselves when we do fake it and we find actually it wasn't. Actually, I got through that pretty well, and it wasn't so bad after all. So, look, thank you very much, everybody, for those that short little conversation. It was good to get your feedback as well. Back to Vinay and Graham.
Thank you. Any thoughts, Graham, that you want to just chime in before we move into this second section about now we're starting to look at some practical tips around it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next couple of slides.
All right, let's go. There you go, Graham. This is your space.
Well, I mean, it leads on perfectly. I mean, the point is, we were just saying, fake it till you make it. That was one of the comments, and or just using your will. I mean, I think we'll get back to the will part of it later, but one of the really interesting things is that you, as well as fake it till you make it, when it comes to loneliness, what I find people who have been really successful at overcoming it is around redefining it till it works for you. So you keep redefining what social connectivity looks like. I think as men, certainly coming out of the post-war era, we had a pretty much standard thing that would that would work for you to stop you being lonely. Come and sit down, right in. So my dad's brilliant. He's how do I do this? Have a seat. Sit down. Have a seat. So might have a seat. You can see everyone on the TV there. So what's really amazing about that is my dad typically fits into a demographic at 95 years of age where he'd be alone, but he figured out a way that he would never be alone, and that's to move in with me and my family. And he
birthday wasn't it on the 2nd?
No, it wasn't my birthday. just I'll be there with us. You listen to me because I'm talking to everyone. You listen. And so now that he's got dementia and he's a bit older, he's not lonely because he's connecting with the family, but it took a fair degree of will to do that.
So what are we supposed to do now?
Just sit and listen.
Just wait.
Yeah, wait. And so one of the things that is about redefining it, but I was saying as men coming out of the post-war era, the marriage and the family, a nuclear, a marriage to one person for as long as you live and having some kids, that was the way that it was portrayed to us to overcome loneliness. What's really interesting about this graphic, if anyone's seen the movie, which I'm hoping a few people might have, is Tom Hanks, if you haven't, is stuck on an island. The movie is Castaway, and he has to pull a character in place, otherwise there would be no dialogue. For so Wilson volleyball, most of you will know, and he actually builds that character, and he spends most of the movie talking to the ball. And in fact, he has to say goodbye to that fictitious character in order to reconnect with humanity through the sailing ship. So what he does is that he creates the character and then leaves it. But what I find really interesting, and not a lot in movies, is a mistake. The fact that it's Wilson, and he actually has to, it's the son of his will that causes him to survive. And I think that's the key for it. Now, for someone who's lonely, telling them to will themselves out of it, if they're chronically lonely, is pretty much a waste of time. But if you're working with them, you can be their Wilson for a little while. Not forever, just like the ball wasn't there forever, but you can help, then they can build on that one relationship to find other relationships. Have we got the next slide, Vinay?
One, Ian. Let me have a look. I think we're moving into the next step.
Maybe this is your one.
No, go for it. I mean, anything else you want to say about that?
So that's what we've been talking about, really, is addressing the perception of loneliness. How do we feel being lonely, and how do we define that loneliness? And most importantly, how do we define the solution to that? So holding those negative feelings in the one hand, and also looking for the quality of connection in the other. You know, not merely existence. What's the next one?
Next one, we're talking about redefining how we talk.
Yeah, is that yours, Vinay?
Yeah, I'm happy for you to talk to it. I'm just here we start to think about as a mentor and a mentee to look at how people are starting to talk, right? What is the narrative around when we say that we're lonely, right? Do we say we are sad and depressed? I need to have people around me, right? It goes down to what we experience sometime in childhood as well, or this third one is quite relevant to me. I need to feel stimulated or distracted in some way, right? So for me, about having the TV on, having at least 25 windows open at the same time, doing 4 different working on 4 different projects at the same time. So those are somewhere underneath that, there is a sense of loneliness and probably self-doubt somewhere hanging under there. So keep your focus on the graphic there, to just try to think about, is your self-doubt actually going to help you towards your goal, or it is going to move away from it, which is where Ian pulled himself out of it and let that self-doubt go. And now we've got 60 people gathering in Ian's house every Saturday morning, thanks to Mentoring Men. And much to the much I'm not sure how is your wife with all of that, Ian, but we'll go into that separate time.
So I find this an interesting one, if I may just make a comment around it.
Yeah, sure.
In that,
Come on in, Mike.
Someone may say, I feel sad and depressed when I'm alone. And as Graham was saying, is how we discuss the dialogue with ourselves about how we place it. And some stuff I read along the way, it said that there's this feeling of loneliness, this gnawing feeling, and you can, to an extent, observe it to see what it is, or try to, but it's a hard one. It's somewhat undefinable, I suppose. But then, if you can observe it and recognise it's a feeling, and not necessarily want it to stop or go away, so it's just a feeling. It's you take away the idea that it's a positive or a negative. Something I read along the way, it said that loneliness in itself isn't the problem. It's the anxiety over loneliness can be the problem. And I'm not saying that's for everyone, but that was part of a reshaping dialogue, which I looked at one stage, and I sort of gained some fortitude from it. And I'm comfortable with myself. I've spent a lot, but I like a mix. I like a mix of people, and fortunately, I'm in a position where I have that. But yeah, being able to recognise that if it becomes an anxiety, then that's the values and dialogues we're giving to it. And anyway, something I've sort of looked at.
Thank you, Mark. Great point. Really appreciate it. And I, along those lines, I've also always, when I've been faced with a situation that is scary, it's the fear of the fear itself, not the actual situation, that really, is stopping me from taking action. So it's like I said, it's often, the anxiety around the loneliness that, people want to step away from it. And that's where, we start to, think about, but it's the opportunity to start defining your perception, right? Is it, are you crazy, or are we trying to escape the craziness of life? It's about starting to look forward to putting ourselves, stepping out of that comfort zone and taking advantage of the time it offers. It's an opportunity for us to reflect and maybe share some of those ideas with our mentors, or with our mentees, or with our loved ones, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of power in writing and journaling. So, actually dedicating time to say, I'm going to put aside time to spend time in solitude, and not thinking that I need to keep myself busy, is often is just shifting and reshaping that perspective on that. And you can see that it's worked with Mark. It's worked with me as well over time. Any thoughts, Graham? I can see you smiling. You want to unmute?
Yeah, well, I think the perception is absolutely key. Reframing the experiences. And there's a whole range of activities that people use to reframe the situations that they're in. But I think the one thing loneliness gives you is a lot of time, and so that comes with a big opportunity for reframing.
And that's something that Ian, you were covered in the NLP session a little bit around reframing.
Yes, which is great. I mean, look, this situation, I know the situation we've been in over the last few weeks has been incredibly hard for a lot of people. From my perspective, it's been the most productive, fulfilling 4 weeks of my life. And I go out, I had a bike ride at least every second day, a really hard bike ride. So it's just, I've taken this opportunity and there's been a number of other opportunities. So I've reframed it from being, it's only when I watch the news and then I turn that off after 5 minutes because it's just nothing but negativity. It's only when I watch that it just puts me in a different frame of mind. But I love the reframe in terms of what it's enabled me to do. But I understand for a lot of people, it's not that situation. So yeah.
No, it's not. And you know, the opportunity is to start taking some small, meaningful steps around it. You know, like Mark was talking about, you know, sitting alone. Mindfulness doesn't have to be you know, crossing your legs and playing some Buddhist music, right? And sitting under a mountain, and, you know, and you don't have to be around to do, you know, to do mindfulness or meditation. It's just about being aware of where you are. And sometimes I find that as men, if I can start to put pen to paper, if I can start making it more kinesthetic, it's easier for me to be mindful. And some of the things that flow out, it's easier that way than for me to count my breaths. So think about how, you know, you might see mindfulness from different perspectives. You know, it might be a visualization exercise. It might be you writing down a story, a journey that you're going through. It might be you drawing something on a piece of paper. But sit down, you know, at least think about sitting down. If you're feeling like you're on the fringes of feeling lonely or starting to feel isolated, it might be useful to take down a piece of paper, say, you know, put down a time of 15 minutes and go, I'm going to write down everything that comes to head. And then you don't have to reflect through it. Just, you know, just put everything down on paper and see where it takes you, because that will start to initiate the whole mindfulness process. And acknowledge your feelings of loneliness. You know, ring up a fellow mentor or you know, or your own mentor, and, you know, let them know what it is that they're experiencing. Hopefully if that mentor or that person attended the session, you know, the likely response that you'd get is, thank you for sharing with me, right? And, you know, if you're still working, it might be, you know, it might be a great opportunity to access that employee assistance program that a lot of workplaces offer, especially at this time, because the only thing that is being, you know, talked about every day during this COVID crisis is how it impacts on the mental health of people. So mental health has really come to the top because there's nothing else much to, you know, focus on. There's no going out, there's no parties, there's no sports, there's nothing else. So mental health up there. So EAP, employee assistance program in workplaces are getting a lot of work out of this. And also, if not, going to a GP and accessing better access program, which I'm sure Ian, you know, you can pass on some information if someone wants it, right?
Yeah. So I thought there would have been exercise on that list.
Exercise coming up.
Oh, okay.
That's coming up, right? So, you know, mindful consumption, again, like, you know, Ian talked about, you know, I in the morning, as I wake up, I have 1 minute of news. That's what Google plays for me, and that's the news I get for the day right now. And you know, that's helping me quite a bit to keep my distance from, you know, whether I feel, you know, and I find my own ways of connecting with the world, you know. And I've talked to people that I haven't talked to a year thanks to the virus, because I've been reaching out and going through my contact list and trying to reach out to people and deleting people who may not be there. So if you're, you know, think about what might be some of the contributing factors as well. That's also important. You know, the stage we are at in our lives also has a big impact on how lonely we might feel, right? So it's a good idea to do, you know, an emotional check. Beyond Blue has an emotional checklist where you can actually go through and see, okay, am I feeling this and this and this? Because it could be that, you know, because loneliness leads to anxiety and depression, you might be at the fringe where you could get some support around it. If you know, if talking it might not be the only option there. All right, think about your brain health. What do I mean by brain health? Your diet. You know, what's your intake like? You know, do you have enough antioxidants, nuts, you know, a mix of food? Being at home, you know, opening a fridge up, you know, try not to get into that beer till 5 o'clock in the evening, even though, you know, it's sitting right there, right? Sleep has, you know, loneliness among young people. A recent survey showed that 1 in 4 young people feel chronically lonely. Okay, and the number one reason to help them address that has been sleep. Okay, so sleep has the same effect. A lack of sleep has the same effect as, you know, you feeling anxious. You know, if you're not getting enough sleep in your system. So, you know, if you don't have enough sleep, if you're not getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep every night, you can start to expect to feel withdrawn, start to feel maybe a sense of loneliness similar to what you might feel when anxious. And the happy hormones, this is what Ian is talking about, every second day. It's on half price at the moment, because guess what? I don't have to spend an hour and a half trying to get to work. I don't have to spend an hour and a half trying to get back home. So I have 3 hours in the day to start doing, some yoga. If I feel like I'm sitting at my desk and, reading a boring email, I get up half an hour, go YouTube session, on a 10-minute HIIT workout, right? And that was, and Ian's video on top of that, who can forget that about him mowing the lawn? Yeah, that's also there. So all of those, are opportunities for you to start taking some action, right? Now, loneliness by no means has entirely been researched yet. There are a number of ways to go forward with this. We are just scratching the surface. We have to think about what might loneliness look like when the 20-year-olds of today become the 40, 50, 60-year-olds of tomorrow. And that's where they're trying to see how relationship influence on the health outcomes, right? So that's where the research is. Once that research comes through, obviously that will feed into where the government starts to put their money, right? But we are starting to take our relationship, as important as other risk factors that might contribute to mortality. So in terms of death rate, if a government wants to reduce the death rate, they're starting to see loneliness as being a significant issue that needs to be addressed. Okay. Now the next question is, how can social relationship be used to reduce risk? Mentoring Men is a perfect example of that. How social relationships are being used to reduce the risk of mortality, right? So great work, Ian and the team, to make sure you keep going on the track you're going, because obviously, whatever we are doing together as a group is contributing towards that. Now, this is my last slide, guys. I just want to finish up with, with one point from each of you. For those who haven't spoken, please don't feel shy to speak at. If I can just ask you, what is the one step that you might take moving on from here to feel better connected with the rest of the world? For me, I'm going to go first. I'm going to go and give my wife a hug, because she's been very patient, giving me feedback on this presentation, also giving me the time after hours to go and do this, and all of that. So that's my, that's my physical connection. Thankfully, I have in my life. So I'm very grateful. So, physical touch is an important part of it. Go on.
Okay,
people.
thank you, Vinay. And the way that we'll do this, I'm just going to call out your name. It'll be according to the list that I have here. But if you don't want to say anything, just say pass, and we'll move on to the next one. But if you have an idea, something that you'd share to get better connected, we're going to start with Ted, please.
Hey, John, thanks for that. I'll just say no video. I can't tell if it's coming up or not. Yeah, no, probably. I think the image on the screen just, does it for me, is do some more bushwalks with the family, getting out in nature without the phones. We do that anyway, but, particularly right now, as long as we're not pulled over and told I'll get fined $1,000. But if we're allowed to do that with the family, that's a big thing for me.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you very much, Ted. Let's move to Daryl. Daryl, what, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
I'm just, what I'm doing is I'm just connecting with some neighbours on Zoom, actually.
Yeah.
I live in a high density unit, but we've got some neighbours upstairs, and they're in self-isolation. So
great idea.
Yeah, doing that, and I think my wife made some she made some yummy food the other day, and I just dropped it off at their door, which is sort of fun,
Yeah.
They're only one level up, but yeah, it's good.
Fantastic. That's really nice. Thank you very much, Daryl. Don, how about for you?
Well, look, I've written a goal before this about connecting and cultivating and expanding close friendships within my circle of contacts. So really, it's just a matter of intentionally reaching out to people by phone, or setting up a FaceTime or whatever other way I can connect. So I'm actually doing that as a goal that I want to achieve. So if it's going to be a SMART goal, I've set myself how many contacts to do a week, and then I'm going to measure it by writing in my diary every time I make a contact. At the end of 4 weeks, I'm going to check that
Very nice.
done this.
That's great. Thank you very much. Smart. Yeah, smart is a great way to keep yourself accountable. John, how about you? Anything for you?
Yeah, look, again, I'd probably find myself agreeing with Don. A lot of lapsed friendships, so I'm going to make a bit of a goal to reconnect with some of those special friendships that formed over the years that have just lapsed in the recent years.
Great. That's really nice, isn't it? Yeah, I think we're all starting to hear from people we haven't heard from a long time. Thanks for that. Mark?
I'm going to do the same. I have a couple of old friends who have been in pretty senior roles, and I've always thought, well, you know, I know that they're doing those big hours and they have their families in every other spare moment. And I think now might be the time to give them a hey and
great idea.
See how they're doing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Thank you indeed. How about you, Alan? Alan, unmute. There we are.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, much as most of the guys. So I belong to 2 large social groups. So I've taken it on myself to contact everybody, either by phone or video call or social media, just to ask how everybody's going. And again, guys I've not heard from in many years are now popping up on my social media. So yeah, renewing friendships.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. That's great. Phil, we've got 2 Phil. So Phil Ainsworth, first of all, please.
Yeah, easy one. I'm 76, and this is my first Zoom presentation. By 10 past tonight, I gate crashed a group in Los Angeles, a very sus group that told me to get the hell out of the place, and I finally found Vinay's face. I've been sitting here terrified and not going to do anything. So tomorrow I'm going to hit the Zoom tutorial. So by tomorrow night I might be back to my usual self and say a few things.
Well, you're certainly connecting with people that all over the world that you didn't expect.
I've been hearing about security problems with Zoom, but I tell you what, this group, I don't know whether they're Hell's Angels or group of gays or who they were, but it wasn't hard to get in there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to really hit the Zoom and try and get myself up to speed on it.
Great idea. Good. Thank you very much, Phil. And the other Phil 77.
Yeah, well, I'm going to probably do more work. I'm looking for a special friend. Probably, obviously, doing that online at the moment. So.
Great. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. How about you, Stephen?
Stephen? I'm still learning how to use this thing. I don't know if you can see me. I have a very old contact list of over maybe 100 people. From time to time, I look through the list, and if I haven't talked to that person over 5 years, I'll give them a call. So that's
very
how
nice.
I get connected.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. That's a great idea. Peter Ulmer. Peter, there you are. Let's unmute you.
Oh,
there
sorry,
you
am I on mute?
Yeah, okay.
Is that better?
Yep.
Am I muted or not?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
You're broadcasting.
Okay.
Podcasting.
I do a lot of texting, and I've decided of late to actually do more FaceTime work because I think it creates that emotional bond, which texting does not. And texting, you lose a lot of nuance and you lose a lot of subtlety, and all of those emotional qualities are stripped out of texting. So I've started doing more FaceTime and more call work because I think it creates a better bond. The other thing I've done is I've got some fairly distant relatives in America and Sweden, and I haven't been in contact with them for some time. So, just over the last week, I've shot them emails to say, listen, we're all in this together. How's it going over there?
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, that's fantastic. So spreading the net far and wide. Thank you, Peter. Nick, how about for you?
Similar to a lot of the guys, I'm going to go through my contact list, contact people that have been in contact, And also try to do it on FaceTime. It's easy enough to just send a few texts and think you've contacted them, but make a time and sit down and have a good old chat with no end time.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, very good. No end time. I like the sound of that too. Very good. Let's see, George.
Yes, my wife and I are good walkers. We walk at least once a day, and now with the coronavirus, we've been walking twice a day. And before the coronavirus, we almost knew everybody who was out walking at the same time as we were. But now with the coronavirus, everybody else is out walking. And so we're meeting a whole new batch of people, and we say hello, and it takes them a long time to reciprocate. And we're just wearing it down at the moment.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Step by step. That's the way to do it.
We'll develop relationships as they get to know us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, George. That's great. Graham, how about for you?
I'm being beckoned to come and play a game of Emperor's Scum, which is a really good card game. So if this doesn't wind up early, that's where I'll be.
That's great. Thank you for that. Guy, what about you? Any ideas?
Yeah, look, I've been inspired by George, and I think I might instigate a family walking program. I've chased down my two daughters who've been hiding in their rooms for the last 2 weeks. Probably for fear of such an eventuality, in fact.
So making them accountable as well. That's not a bad idea. Good. Thank you very much, Guy. Where are we? We're running out of people now. Ian.
Mine's more self-centered. It's been such a busy day. The tea I made for my wife was a 4 and 20 pie, which she wasn't impressed with at all. So I get to go down and do the dishes and suck up to her. What about you, John?
For me, so what comes to mind? I mean, it's certainly a lot of. This is great to hear all these different ideas. Just as we've been speaking, there's one fellow who comes to mind, who is a divorced guy. He'd be in his 60s, and I'm going to reach out to him because I think, I just sometimes you just kind of get the feeling that somebody wants to have a chat. So that will be on my to-do list for tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we're done. Did we miss somebody?
No.
I think we caught everybody there, which is great. So thank you very much indeed. Vinay, would you like to just anything to wrap up finally?
No, I think this collaboration at the end. I'm grateful that everyone came up with really good ideas. I took them all down. It is fantastic for me to keep going to make sure that I don't fall into the trap myself. No one, whether an expert or doesn't matter where they come from, is always susceptible to feeling lonely and the anxiety that comes around it. And I think the opportunity is for us to reach out and connect and start to address that and help us reshape our thinking. So thank you everyone for listening. I really appreciate it. And thank you to John, Ian and Graham for facilitating it.
I was going to say, can everyone just unmute? And I just want to thank John. This is new technology. I thought John did a brilliant job, the breakout rooms. I thought the way Vinay and Graham spoke is fantastic. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Now, we have recorded this, so this will be available. Ian, how do people get hold of this recording if they'd like it?
I've got no idea.
I'll help you ffigure something out, Ian.
It'll be in our archives.
Phil's an IT guy. Phil's an IT guy. I mean, between the...
Yeah.
One of the things you may give some thought to also is for those who are still working and who travel, just to strip out the soundtrack also as a podcast.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, thank you, Peter. Thank you for volunteering.
Do it one of two ways. We could do it visually, or we could do it as a podcast. Or
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Okay. So
Great.
just
Ian, thank you.
thank you. Just remind everyone, so tomorrow night at 8 o'clock is the fitness one, which is related, and there'll be another one the week after. So anyway, all right, thanks guys. Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
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 All right. Yeah.
Hey, Dad. Go to bed. Bedtime.
I thought it was annoying.
Stephen, if you, Bill, if you go down the bottom right, you'll see link meeting. Bill, if you look down the bottom right hand side, you'll see a red thing come up, leave meeting.
End meeting, it says. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's up the top on mine. That's the problem.
Okay, so just click that.
Just click that way.
Good.
There we go. Right, well done, guys.
Brilliant job. Really good. John, that was great. I thought the breakout rooms were hilarious.
Thanks, John.
Vinay, just that really good stuff. And Graham, delighted. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I think it worked well. We had 20 people, 21 at one stage and we had about 15 there at the end. So that was a reasonable turnout. Very good.
Now, there could be, the net's being cast wider tomorrow. So, Graham, you might have to mute. So, I don't know how, this could build to like 100, 200 people. I don't know what we do there.
Well, yeah, you just have to think about Ian, how do you want the message to get across to the audience? So I think you have to start with your circles of influence. So so you got your close group. I mean, my obligation is to the people in the program.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When tomorrow's thing, you have to think about, are you just providing general advice to the bigger population? I guess you just got to think about, who are you pitching it to? That's just my thoughts. What do you think, John?
Well, I think for this particular forum, which is mentors, it will be manageable, up to with an audience maybe of 40 or 50. Yeah. Once you get over those levels, then you're not doing it. You're not running a meeting so much. You're running a conference or a webinar, and then it needs a different strategy, which could be to divide and conquer, where you have geographic groups and so forth. Yeah. So that would be another. That's what we need to think about for the future.
Yeah, I thought one of the things that worked really well was when you went round and asked everybody at the end. And I was blown away by the answers, taking the food up to next door, contacting people I haven't heard for 5 years. To me, that was good. Breakout rooms are good. I think
the breakout room, there was no background information, right? There was no slide in the breakout room.
No, that's why you need to have. That's why I was keen just to have kind of one thought as you go into the room. You don't want to give them two, because you're only there for a short time.
Yeah.
So it's
And I've seen with the mentors, because I guess they've been through the course and the vulnerability thing is far more open. That Vinay, from your point of view, you get a lot more feedback as you're presenting. People are commenting, and even I guess a few key people, if we just start throwing a few thoughts in there, other people then start speaking. So I don't know how you thought. It was at the start, because I couldn't even see my picture there. I thought, it's too one way. Sorry, you're doing a great job, but I was concerned that there wasn't going to be an opportunity. But then you gave that opportunity, and that just
That's what this is about. This is not about education. This is more about facilitation of information, because now at least how 20 people who are associated with Mentoring Men are thinking about this thing.
Yeah.
I think that is my whole intention of bringing this on board. And I think that's where when you do your future webinars with Daniel and whoever else it might be, just ask them so that they're clear with the intention. Because if I'm not clear, then it just becomes a scattered kind of mesh that is spreading out.
Yeah, I've written to Lindsay Walker again. I thought for the next one, so not the next forum, but for the webinar next Thursday would be mental health first aid, which she presented before. Like it's a different audience in a way. So so she's going to come back to us, but I just don't I don't know how well that's going to go. I love the intimacy of 20 or 30 people, and everyone gets an opportunity, and you bring them out, even the ones who hadn't spoken, you encourage them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, do we know how many people? Is there a registration page? No.
With this one, there's no registration, right?
Yeah. No. Tomorrow, I'm guessing. If I had to guess, I'd say be bigger than today, and I'm guessing 30 or 40 people, but it could be more.
Okay.
So Daniel's promoted this amongst his gym membership, and the Australian Men's Health Forum have also promoted this. So
okay,
but we'll just see. I mean, it's the first one as well. Like it hasn't been. So the numbers were built.
Yeah. So breakout groups and so forth. We could still do them even with a big gang, but you can't get everybody to say something afterwards.
Yeah. It's almost like we needed a team captain as well. I thought I was talking too much. That's why I said, Peter, you're in group 2. I mean, yeah.
Did you split them up strategically, John?
No, I just did it at random, but I had re-picked in case you wanted to do the next one. The second breakout, I mixed people up manually.
Okay.
Yeah. We didn't have time.
One thing I noticed that we ran out of time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think maybe I'm trying to. I thought it was if you wouldn't want to go any longer. But then the question at the end of it, I thought was really, really good. And I thought
it's very practical.
Yeah, Graham's dad coming in was an interesting touch. It was a nice touch.
Amazing.
Connection.
Yeah.
Although he's the one that keep talking to Graham. So,
but that's okay. I mean, Graham. I think Graham knows very well how to manage that situation. So I think he bringing his dad and asking him to sit down is just showing the vulnerability aspect of it. We don't have to keep this facade on where we push people aside and go, this is me, but this is reality.
Get the gaff tape out. Yeah,
that's it. So this is who we are. I'm going to talk to Graham about doing something in the aged care space because of the experience with his dad.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Vinay, can I ask what your qualifications are?
I have a graduate diploma in counseling.
Fantastic.
But before that in IT.
Yeah. Okay. Beauty. All right. Awesome. I better go and do the dishes.
All right.
Give me a heart. See, the thing is, she's been at work. I've been home. I don't stop, right? And then you get where's this cordon bleu meal on the table? And it's like I steamed some veggies and put a pie in the oven. It's like, anyway, she doesn't understand. Anyway.
You'll just have to stick a wedge of lemon in the top of the pie and say it's a gourmet.
That's it. Next time it might have to be Mrs. Max, Ian.
Okay, before you go in, so for tomorrow's setup, we're starting it's later, isn't it? 8 till 9, is it?
Yeah, and we need. I did ask Daniel if he'd heard from you, and he hadn't. So
I've got a call with him tomorrow at 2.
Okay, yeah, please. And I need to. I haven't thought about that. So
I'll talk to him about it.
I'll just do a quick. I like to give a mentoring men up. I want to. If there's new people, I want to let them know about the program and then just where to go. So I'll probably just go through the same thing again as what I did tonight. So
yeah.
Because you're definitely going to have different people, right?
It's a public. It'll be men and women. It'll be all sorts of people there.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if it's women, but there'd be. Yeah. There'd be mentors there as well, but there'd be a number of guys from the. I'm hoping from the gym. Could be a flop, but yeah.
But you've advertised it on Facebook, right?
It's on Facebook. I think it's on Instagram, and the Australian Men's Health Forum have also promoted it.
Yeah. So you can expect anyone and everyone to be there.
Yeah. All sorts.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay.
Thank you. Back to Vladivostok.
Thank you.
See you guys.
See ya.